Sweet! Alright guys, welcome to, we're at 14. So, welcome to another episode of San Diego Athletics Live. Notice I'm not joined by my two usual cohorts. Brian and Anders are in the background, but today we have with us Dr. Teresa Larson, yes, of Movement RX. Now, I've known this lady for like a couple years.
Yep.
Right?
Yeah.
Besides being just an amazing physical therapist, she has actually been the founder of the Resilience Project.
It's not the Resilience Project, it's the Warrior Strong Movement.
Warrior Strong Movement, and we'll get into that in a little bit. But she is our local physical therapist here at San Diego Athletics. She got her degree from University of
St. Augustine.
Augustine,
yeah.
Yes. How long ago now have you been doing this whole journey?
So I've been a doctor of physical therapy for 3.5 years now.
Cool. So what exactly does that do? What does a doctor of physical therapy? I noticed on the end of your name you have like DDT, we got a couple more.
DDT?
Yes, there you go. CS, SFMA, OG, triple OG, I think was in there.
Yeah, triple OG is first and foremost.
Yeah.
No, so doctor of physical therapy just means that anybody, especially in the state of California, pretty cool, can come to see me without having a referral from a doctor. So we have autonomous practice now in California, and I can also diagnose an athlete with movement dysfunction.
Very cool.
So that's kind of cool. CSCS is the NSCA, National Strength and Conditioning Certification, Certified Strength and Conditioning Specialist, which I did last year, and then SFMA is the Selective Functional Movement Assessment, which I really like. It helps me look at the athlete head to toe, movement and motor control, mobility and motor control, and see kind of what's going on and give me a good snapshot of how to start working on an athlete and help them get better.
Absolutely, and that's where I think Teresa and I first started moving. I thought I was an amazing athlete, and then she quickly showed me that I move horribly well. And
horribly well.
Yeah, you like how you added that? But yeah, she basically has the ability to take any type of movement fault that you guys might have in your everyday lifting, out there in your regular world, whether it's cycling, any type of competitive sport, and she can get you to move better. So you mentioned the thing with mobility, right? That's a big thing that you focus on. So for those that do not know, what's the difference between, what's mobility? Like, is it stretching?
No.
Flexibility?
Yeah, so that's good. Mobility just means movement, actually. And when we talk about mobility, we specifically in a physical therapy practice, we're talking about joint, how the joint moves, how the soft tissue moves around it, and connective tissue. So that's mobility.
So why is that important for athletes, whether gym goer or everyday society people? You know, why is it important for that joint and that muscle to move correctly?
Well, it's important to move correctly, so positions like that you're doing in the gym that kind of challenge you to these extreme motions and challenge your body, they allow your body to do those movements. So that makes sense. So joints and soft tissue are very important for making, as well as the nervous system to make your body move. So if you don't have good joint mobility from sitting at a desk all day, or being in an overextended posture all day, that's going to affect how you move later on. That's going to affect how you pick up your laundry basket, that's going to affect how you pick up a barbell, that's going to affect how you play with your kids.
Okay, so going back to like grade school, that was my gym teacher just having us stretch and touch our toes, right?
No.
Okay, so no, we need to do other things besides that too?
So stretching, I mean, I could say the layperson looks at mobility as more of like a flexibility issue. That's a common term, which I'm not going to fault someone for saying flexibility. But when I think of flexibility, let's be more educated on it and say, what are we looking at flexibility in? Is it, the joint or the soft tissue, right? So when someone says, well, the doctor told me to go work on my mobility, so I'm going to go to yoga class. Okay, well, yoga, you're going to be working on the soft tissue, right? You're going to work on the soft tissue length. But let's say your joint is restricted. Well, you're missing out on mobilizing that joint as well. And so there's things that you can do besides yoga, right, or Pilates, or just stretching that's going to help that joint move better. So mobility encompasses the term flexibility.
So we'll use my case. When we first met, I had knee problems. So we went in there and you not only worked around the joint, but you worked the attachment muscle. Specifically for that type of mobility exercises, is there a common thing that we have as far as athletes in the CrossFit realm coming in? Like, is there like something you're like, oh, 9 times out of 10, it's going to be something like this?
So, yes, so that's a good reference to the knee, because the knee, I consider like the middle child. Does anyone here have a middle brother or sister, or are you one?
Me? No.
Okay, because my middle brother is a freaking nightmare, okay? So think of your knee as that child or brother or sister. It's usually the above and below, you know, it's the one that gets pissed off, basically. But really, the little brother or sister and bigger brother, big sister are the problem, so hip and ankle. So usually a knee issue comes from the fact that your ankle is limited. This is common, this is more of a common issue. So the ankle dorsiflexion is limited, and/or plantar flexion, let's say for a runner, and then and/or hip flexion or extension is limited. So what happens is, if those are limited in mobility in the joint and soft tissue, ankle and hip, then the knee is going to get the shaft, like the middle child.
So with that same analogy, can we use that with like the shoulder?
Yeah.
The shoulder's a joint. So
right.
If I'm having issues with my shoulder, do I need to work downstream and upstream from that issue?
So let's say, you know, when I go through an assessment, someone comes in with a shoulder issue, let's say bicep, clearly looks like a bicep issue. Like their biceps are anterior delts flared up, very common. Well, hey, when you look above and below, you got their thoracic spine, that upper back to mid back. You've got their neck. You've got all the muscles that attach to that thoracic spine as well as the scapula that affect the shoulder joint, right? And then you got the elbow. So again, the elbow is more like the middle child, but still tissues that cross the elbow are the tricep, right? The tricep and the bicep. The big biceps and triceps.
Absolutely, yeah.
So you want to look at those tissues as well.
So besides coming and seeing you, which we offer that awesome service here at San Diego Athletics, what can our members as well as everyday gym goers do to help their mobility? Pre-workout and post-workout. And now, is there a difference between doing the two?
Yeah, and that's a good question. So, you guys, first of all, let's just say, as a physical therapist, a lot of times people view us as like, oh, I only good when you're injured. Listen, I'm going to help you get better, but there's so much that you can do on your own. Like 96-98% of these issues that happen, you can prevent on your own. If you just start to listen and be mindful of your own movement and body. Like, if your shoulder mobility goes to here and you think doing Nancy overhead squats is a good idea when your shoulder mobility is here, then you might have some stress in that joint and you might have some pain there. If you start to learn like, okay, I can't get my arms overhead, why not? And you start to do work around that joint to make that better, because there's
It's okay.
there are 700 videos online. There are 700 videos online on how to do different joint techniques to help improve your shoulder overhead position. Like, there are things you can do without a PT, chiro, acu, somebody with a license telling you what to do.
So just real quickly, what type of tools can they use to get into those problem areas?
So like, for example, pre-workout, I would recommend bands. Using bands to work on that joint capsule. So Dr. Kelly Starrett talks about this on Mobility a lot. Banded mobilizations for the joint pre-workout. 10 minutes. Give yourself 10 minutes. Post-workout, more soft tissue work. Tap into that parasympathetic nervous system using a foam roll, a kettlebell, a barbell, etc. Again, another 10 minutes. 2 minutes minimum per mobilization. If you, let's say you are having knee issues and you just feel like, okay, mashing my quads makes me feel better before a workout, okay, 30 seconds. But you don't want a deep tissue massage before you go into a hard workout. So, does that make sense?
Absolutely. Now, you touched on it, especially higher level athletes, we kind of push through the threshold. Now, is there good pain and is there bad pain as everyday gym goers? And when should we listen to our body? Because, I get up, I saw a whole meal today when we were doing some agility work at the coach's meeting, and it was painful just watching him move around. So where is that point as an experienced athlete and a brand new newcomer and us as coaches where we need to watch those people level of discomfort in a workout?
So that's a really good question, and pain is actually very subjective. Everyone's pain tolerance is a little bit different, but when there is pain, like ouch, aching, burning, numbness and tingling.
That's a big one, right?
This is going to rib. I want ribs. This is going to rib. That is not a good pain. Like, discomfort, I'm sore, well, I just had a hard workout yesterday, this is uncomfortable. That's okay. But still being mindful of, hey, what's your, if you track your heart rate, like, I am really fatigued in the first 5 minutes of this workout, maybe I need to take it a little bit slower today. But when you have pain, again, aching, numbness, ripping, burning, which is all symptoms of, a torn tissue, a pulled tissue, something stretched a little too much. Look at the stress strain curve if you're a physics nerd. You don't actually want to stress that tissue anymore because it could eventually be an injury that takes you out of the game for a while. And we want to keep you guys in the gym training.
Absolutely. Now, is there a point of diminishing returns where, like, either genetics, age, pre-existing injuries come into factor, or we can't all basically be a cephalopod? That's trademarked right there, right?
Yeah.
Or can we all just become these incredibly moving biological machines at any age or any level?
Well, I've never seen a perfectly moving human being, even Olympic athletes. So, Jesus, maybe.
Yeah.
Yeah. But I think that age does have something to do with your recovery time and the way your tissues respond. So as we age, pretty much past 25, depending on what sport you do, you have to really keep in mind, even when you're younger, but especially past 25, like keep in mind your recovery time. Are you in here 6 days a week, balls to the wall, right? Probably not a good idea. But yes, I think everyone, there is a genetic component to soft tissue. The more people I've worked with, there are people who are freaking stiff. And it's going to be, to gain that 4 inches of dorsiflexion or full 20-degree dorsiflexion in their ankle is may not actually ever happen. Like, it just may not, depending on their diligence and work ethic and their joint and their soft tissue. So, I hate to say that, but some people, they may not reach optimal range of motion based on the way they're born, their genetics, etc. But for the most part, if there's no genetic component to it, and there's no congenital issue going on, or no trauma, there are optimal ranges that we look at in our practice that people should be able to reach.
So working on the extreme of our CrossFit sport, those athletes at a higher level, the Nick Smiths, the Fronings, are they at a more optimal level of mobility, or are you sitting there watching them on ESPN and covering your eyes and like, I don't know how my guy's shoulder isn't gone right now?
No, well, Rich Froning moves very well, and I haven't broken down his movement in my own way, but looking at him move, his first rep looks like his last rep. Like the way we train.
So is he spending more time on his mobility?
Yes, okay. He spends time on his mobility, and I only know him through Dr. Kelly Starrett. I don't talk to Rich regularly.
Right.
But I do know he's one of those guys who's very diligent about his work ethic and mobility. Camille LeBlanc is another one, and she's someone I was, familiar with at Invictus. But you've got Hunter McIntyre, a obstacle course racer, one of the top obstacle racers in the world. Spends, he trains 3 hours a day. He spends 20 minutes for every hour for every hour he trains. So there's up to an hour of work he does on his soft tissue and joints a day for recovery.
And is that a point? So, like, if I'm coming in here spending an hour, about how much hour working out, right? I jump into a class. How much mobility, stretching, soft tissue release should I be trying to focus on recovery? On a semi-daily basis.
I think on a daily basis, as a human being who just moves and is living 10 minutes minimum, whether you cross it or not. And then for every hour you train, tack on 15 minutes of that.
Okay.
Because you're putting your tissue under stress. And we do know that as tissues get stressed, they get stiffer over time. There can be a lot of blood flow there for a moment when you're training, but they get stiffer. So doing your own soft tissue work and joint mobility over time, according to research, will change. It'll help you recover, and also if you're trying to achieve, full overhead position or full ankle dorsiflexion or full hip flexion, that tissue takes for plasticity, like permanent change to happen, 7 months to 2 years to change.
7 months to 2 years.
Yeah.
So
consistency, 6 to 7 days a week, that 10 minutes minimum, or add on for every hour of training.
Right.
It's that, or go to the doctor in 10 years and take NSAIDs when you're hurting.
So that's basically like if I'm rolling in right when class starts and rushing out, so I'm just asking for it.
Yes. So you can't expect your body to perform optimally if you haven't given it, one, a good warm-up, but also done the appropriate tissue care. Like, we know that you probably know in your body right now what are hot spots, what are areas that might bother you, right? So go after those. Go online, go ask your coach, like, hey coach, what can I do for my shoulder? Or my upper back is very stiff. I've been sitting at a computer and my trap and scapula area is very stiff. What can I do? Well, you got a wealth of knowledge here in this facility.
Oh, that was directed towards us. Awesome. Wow. We don't get compliments like that.
Yeah. You guys are a wealth of knowledge. Like
we do have one quick question. If you guys have any questions, you can shoot them across. Yeah. But Paul Bromlin said, what would you recommend you do to have you ensure one weak shoulder stay healthy and perhaps over time strengthen to match the other shoulder? Currently I spend about 10 minutes before each workout on shoulder mobility / stretching exercises, but not sure they're the right ones or enough.
Okay, so this is Paul?
Yes.
So Paul, this is a good question, and actually a lot of you, when I go teach the mobility seminars, you possibly get this question a lot as well. So many of us have differences unilaterally, shoulder, hip, even different parts of our spine. And so what you should be doing, there's the mobility piece, which should always be first, right? You're missing the front rack position, the overhead position. I like to go off of the archetypes that kind of Kelly talks about in his book.
And mobilizing those movements.
Yeah, mobilizing those movements, yeah, thank you. But that's not it. Like, once you achieve the mobility, what about the strength piece? And if you know you're limited, let's say you have full overhead mobility, but you are weaker left to right, then there are single leg things you can do for strengthening and building motor control. So if you think about, okay, I feel weaker in a push press with a barbell, why don't you think about doing a single arm press with a kettlebell?
Interesting.
Right?
That's kind of what Brian has been programming for the last couple of weeks.
Yeah. So
we might have talked about this.
Yeah. So you got a smart bunch of people here. You can do that. You can do belly up presses, right? With a kettlebell, add a little bit more of a stability component to it where, hey, you don't have the comfort of that bell hitting your wrist. Now you have to balance it and press. That's really great for building the shoulder. And just so you guys know about the shoulder joint, rotator cuff is there for supporting the joint. It's not there for big movements, right? It's there for stabilizing that joint. So you have to make sure that your lats, your teres major, your pec, like all the bigger muscles that surround that thoracic spine, neck, shoulder are strong too. So doing things like pressing, Turkish get-up type movements are really awesome for the shoulder joint.
So the stabilizing as well as power is good for that shoulder.
Yes.
Now, is there, I don't want to say kind of like a idiot's guide to mobility, but is there like a certain like movements and things that every single person should be coming in and doing on a semi-daily basis, whatever type of level they're at as far as CrossFit? Or just a regular, cyclist or runner, things that they could be running through?
Well, I would say so if you can't get into a pistol position, right, that's not everyone is able to pistol per se because of strength, but ankles, there's a lot of ankle limitations out there, and ankles affect a lot of lifting. So, and they affect running. So ankle mobility, I would see, can you do a pistol? And if not, work on the joint and soft tissue capacity to do that. So there, again, you can look in the Self-Electric book, you can look online. The other thing is thoracic spine. So I find that a lot of people
Which is what? Thoracic spine?
If you look at my shirt,
yeah.
Kind of
look at that.
Right. So neck to upper back, so upper lower back, is your thoracic spine. And when that doesn't move well and that gets super stiff, it affects the shoulder joint and affects the hips. So I would recommend doing some joint work for your thoracic spine.
Very cool. So I do want to talk about before we get out of here this resiliency project and working with the wounded warrior.
Yeah.
Right? So how long have you been doing this?
So it's an interesting choice of words because Resiliency Project is run by Troy Willis and Kelly Starr, and I help them out with that. But I started the Warrior Movement. It's been, I don't know, 6 months since I started it, and it's based around, I'm writing a memoir called Warrior. And I realized, like, okay, here I am writing this memoir. What does this mean? Like, what does it mean sharing my story, pieces of my story that some of you, if you read the book, you'll learn, that make me that are the why behind what I do now in physical therapy. And so I put this Warrior Strong movement together because I healed so much from writing my story and sharing it, and I didn't realize who would want to listen to it. And it really has nothing to do with mobility, you know, and so I decided, why not ask other people to share pieces of their story? And so people have been coming out of the woodwork, sharing pieces of their story. People I know, I didn't even know that was a part of their life that had happened to them. And by sharing your story, this concept called post-traumatic growth can actually take place. We do know that there's post-traumatic stress out there. Anybody, whether you're in the military or not, can experience it. But if you engage in good communities like this, you're around good people, you share your story, you're able to grow. Like, there's a growth component. And so I've just found, like, I've really dug, like, giving people a platform to share.
Do we have a time frame for this memoir?
Yeah. So the memoir is supposed to be published by HarperCollins, April 5th, 2016. And the Warrior Movement can be seen on drteresalarson.com.
Boom, look at that. Yeah. Do you guys have any questions? Please throw those things up there real quickly. We got to get Dr. T out of here. She's got patients and people.
Yeah, you know.
She's got to help fix the world. Anything?
Yeah.
B had a question?
Yeah, I'm gonna ask a question real quick. Possible. So, my special lady friend, her name is Kim, wife. Yeah, she's my wife. It seems like no matter what she does, even if, like, so for me, when I do a lot of, like, cleans or snatches, I'll feel my traps sore the next day, and all the way through, like, the upper trap, lower trap. No matter what she does with her upper body, she always has her traps locked up the next day. And it can be a pull-up, it can be overhead pressing, handstand push-upping, clean snatches, but it's odd that it's even something like a ring row or a pull-up, something where generally the traps are depressed and they're not shrugged up, and yet the next day she still is complaining about having these ridiculous knots and stuff in the whole trap region, and she's very uncomfortable.
Okay.
So what may potentially be the cause of this, and what can we do to work on it?
So that's a good question, and I'm sure a lot of you listening might experience this or have a loved one. So first thing that comes to mind is if it's muscle tension, constant muscle tension, it's probably a joint restriction in her spine. So coming from, and I'm just, not without viewing her thoracic spine or neck. So missing neck flexion as well as neck extension. Because all of those motions that you're talking about you want to create a spinal neutral position. But if she lacks mobility in these positions, in the thoracic spine or neck, it can put more stress on the soft tissue, and she could inappropriately be using those muscles. So, basically needing maybe some neuro-re-education, we call it, for that shoulder joint to work more efficiently. So her upper trap, mid-trap, / levator don't work as hard. Because for whatever reason, they probably are.
They're overworking.
Due to the either joint restriction and or just the fact that she needs some neuro-education. Like, she might need some actual therapy on that. Because that is probably becoming more of a chronic case, I would say. I mean, has it been going on for a while?
It's very chronic, yeah. It's been a number of years.
Okay, so she might benefit, because you can have people who move very well. We've seen athletes compare. Great athletes move very well, but yet their biomechanics, they're missing ranges somewhere, and that's affecting the coordinating soft tissue. So that might be worth,
visit to Dr. T.
Yeah, there we go. So that would be a situation where it might warrant a visit. However, for the majority of your guys' cases, working on, going into, say you have an overhead workout that day. Hey, I'm missing overhead position. I feel really tight there. Okay, well, those are things you can manage and work on. Like, you don't need a doctor to tell you what to do. Like, there's a lot of information online, you guys, and a wealth of knowledge.
Boom, look at that. Well, thank you guys for joining us once again. We should be back next week. I think we got another surprise for you, another guest, right? Mix it up.
Yeah.
So we will keep you guys informed, and thank you for tuning in.
Thanks, you guys.
Thanks, guys. Thanks.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, thank you.
Let's see if I can turn on these. Just swipe it.
Hey there. How are you?